It all started on a quiet suburban street, the kind where everyone thinks nothing ever goes wrong. Until it does. A disabled little girl, fragile and defenseless, was trapped in the nightmare of a cruel HOA Karen, someone who thought rules and control gave her the right to hurt others. Doors slammed, screams echoed, and no one dared intervene except for one man, a decorated veteran who had just returned home with his loyal service dog. In that terrifying moment, the stakes were life and death. Every second felt like an eternity as the girl's cries pierced the air, her fear palpable, her safety hanging by a thread. And then, just when it seemed all hope was lost, the veteran and his dog appeared, ready to face unimaginable danger. What happened next will shock you, break your heart, and leave you questioning how far someone can go to protect innocence. Before we dive into this shocking story, I have a question for you. Where are you watching this from? Drop the name of your city in the comments below. I want to know which part of the country is tuning in. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our intense, true-life stories that are full of suspense, emotion, and unexpected twists. Now, let me take you to that terrifying afternoon. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and everything seemed normal in the neighborhood, but behind one perfectly manicured lawn, a nightmare was unfolding. A young girl, struggling with her disability, was cornered by a merciless HOA Karen. She didn't understand mercy or compassion or humanity, only control. Every shout, every harsh word, every cruel action left the girl frozen in fear, unsure if anyone would ever come to help. But fate has a strange way of intervening. Just when it seemed the girl's cries would go unheard, a veteran, fresh from serving his country, appeared on the scene. He wasn't alone. His loyal service dog was by his side, ready to act. Together, they were about to face a situation no one could have predicted, stepping into a world of danger and suspense that would change everyone's lives forever. This isn't just a story about fear and cruelty, it's about courage, loyalty, and the shocking lengths people will go to protect the innocent. And now, let's go straight to the exact moment when everything changed. The afternoon had started innocuously enough. The streets were quiet, children's laughter drifting from yards where sprinklers danced in the sunlight. But behind the pristine fences and perfectly trimmed hedges, a storm was quietly brewing. The girl, just 8 years old, had been walking home from her therapy session, her wheelchair moving slowly over the cracked pavement. Her mother had always warned her about this particular neighbor, Karen, but no one could have predicted the level of cruelty she was capable of. Karen had been a fixture in the Homeowners Association for years, the self-appointed queen of rules and order, but underneath her polished exterior lurked something far more sinister. Today, she had singled out the little girl for a reason that made no sense to anyone but her, a supposedly wrongly parked wheelchair on the sidewalk. But it wasn't about parking, it was about power. And Karen thrived on the feeling of controlling others, making them cower, making them small. As the girl approached the curb in front of Karen's house, she noticed the door slowly creak open. Karen's sharp eyes followed her every movement. Without a word, Karen stepped out, her face twisted into a mask of anger. "You think you can just roll along without consequences?" she spat, her voice harsh and cold. The girl froze, gripping the wheels of her chair, her heart hammering in her chest. She tried to explain, to say she hadn't meant any harm. But Karen didn't care. Words didn't matter to her. Only domination did. Within moments, Karen had blocked the path entirely, leaning over the girl as if trying to crush her spirit. The little girl's chest tightened with panic, tears forming in her eyes. Every neighbor who passed by avoided eye contact, pretending they didn't see the escalating confrontation. Fear gripped her like an iron vice. She couldn't move, couldn't escape, and worst of all, she felt utterly alone. Then, Karen's cruelty escalated. She grabbed at the girl's wheelchair, trying to shove it off the sidewalk, her fingers digging into the small frame. The girl cried out, the sound sharp and piercing, echoing down the street. For a brief moment, the world seemed to stop, the sunlight glinting off Karen's watch, the quiet suburban hum replaced by the terrified screams of a child. It was at that exact moment that a shadow appeared at the edge of the street. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped into view. His movements were calm, deliberate, and measured. At first, Karen didn't notice him, but the girl's eyes widened as she recognized him. Not just any stranger, but a veteran, a man whose presence commanded respect, whose aura screamed experience and strength. By his side trotted a large, powerful dog, muscles rippling under its sleek coat, eyes fixed on the scene unfolding. The veteran didn't rush in. He watched, assessing, calculating. There was no panic in his stance, only readiness. The girl, sensing hope for the first time, called out weakly, "Please, help me." That plea, so small and fragile, seemed to pierce the thick armor of cruelty surrounding Karen. Karen finally noticed the man and the dog, and for a split second, her face registered surprise, a flicker of uncertainty, but it didn't last. She straightened up, trying to assert dominance, pointing a finger at the veteran. "This doesn't concern you," she barked. Her voice was firm, but behind it was an unfamiliar tremor. The veteran took a single step forward. His dog growled low, a warning rumble that reverberated through the quiet street. The tension was almost tangible. Every neighbor on the street now stopped, peeking from behind curtains and fences, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. The air seemed charged, electric with fear, anticipation, and the possibility of violence. Karen lunged at the girl again. But this time, the veteran acted. He moved swiftly, positioning himself between the child and the aggressor. His presence was commanding, and his tone carried a weight that Karen had never encountered. "Step back. Now," he said, voice calm but impossible to ignore. His hand rested lightly on the dog's collar, ready to release the animal if necessary. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Karen stared at him, eyes wide, her mind racing. She had dealt with disobedience before with children, with neighbors, but never someone like this. This was different. This was someone trained to handle danger, someone who didn't hesitate or waver. The little girl, still trembling, felt her fear begin to ebb slightly. Hope surged inside her tiny chest. She had thought no one would come. She had thought the cruelty would never end. But now, with the veteran standing firm and the dog at the ready, the first real glimmer of safety appeared in her world. Karen's lips curled into a sneer, though it lacked the confidence of before. "You think you can tell me what to do?" she hissed, stepping closer, but her movements were measured, cautious. The veteran didn't flinch. His eyes locked onto hers, unwavering. "I don't think. I know. Step back. You're done here," he said, and in that moment, the street held its breath. The confrontation was no longer just between a bully and a child. It had escalated into a showdown between cruelty and courage, between fear and protection, and the outcome was anything but certain. Every second stretched into eternity as the tension built, the quiet suburban afternoon transforming into a battlefield of wills. The veteran's presence had changed everything. What had begun as an ordinary day, a routine stroll home for a disabled child, had turned into a life-or-death confrontation. And just as it seemed the situation might explode, something entirely unexpected happened, something that would shock the neighbors, the girl, and even Karen herself. But that moment, the turning point that would change everything, is where Section 2 begins. The street seemed to shrink around them, every sound amplified. The scrape of the wheelchair's wheels on the concrete, the faint rustle of leaves in the wind, the low growl of the veteran's dog. Karen's eyes darted from the girl to the man, calculating, scheming, desperate to find a way to regain control. But the veteran wasn't like the others she had intimidated before. His calm, commanding presence radiated authority, and his stance told her one thing: he would not back down. Karen's lips curled into a twisted smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You think you can protect her?" she spat, taking a threatening step forward. The veteran shifted slightly, placing himself more firmly between Karen and the girl. His dog, sensing the tension, bared its teeth and growled louder, its low rumble vibrating through the air. The dog wasn't aggressive for the sake of aggression. It was a warning, a signal that any harm to the girl would have immediate consequences. The little girl clutched the side of her wheelchair, tears streaking her face, shaking as she watched the standoff unfold. Her mind raced. How could someone be so cruel? How could a grown adult find joy in making a child suffer? And yet, at the same time, how could someone like this veteran appear out of nowhere, like an unexpected guardian angel ready to fight for her safety? Karen's hands trembled as she gestured wildly, attempting to intimidate them. You don't know who you're dealing with. I have authority here. Her voice cracked despite her efforts to sound confident. Authority, but against this man, against his training, his experience, it meant nothing. The veteran's eyes remained locked on hers, unwavering, unflinching. He wasn't just protecting the girl. He was standing as a wall between innocence and malice, a shield that would not break. Suddenly, Karen lunged forward, her hand reaching for the girl's wheelchair, attempting to knock it over. But the veteran reacted, instantly, moving with precise speed honed from years of military experience. He stepped in, blocking her with his body, a controlled force that stopped Karen cold. The dog barked sharply, circling, ready to defend. Karen froze mid-lunge, startled by the sudden escalation. She had never been confronted like this before. The neighbors, who had watched silently, began to whisper amongst themselves. Some considered calling the police, but fear kept them frozen. Others peered from behind curtains, captivated by the unfolding drama. No one had expected this level of confrontation in their sleepy suburban neighborhood, and no one could have predicted what Karen would do next. In a sudden, shocking move, Karen reached inside her jacket. The girl's heart skipped a beat, fear paralyzing her. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. But the veteran reacted instantly, assessing the situation in a fraction of a second. He wasn't just standing there. He had anticipated potential threats. He shifted his stance, moving slightly forward to position himself between Karen and the child, his dog right at his side, ready to intervene. Karen pulled out a small, sharp object, a knife. The moment hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Every second felt like an eternity. But before she could advance, the veteran's calm, steady voice cut through the tension. "Put down now." There was no pleading in his tone, no hesitation. The authority in his voice was absolute. The dog growled again, a low, menacing sound that made the hairs on Karen's arm stand on end. For a moment, Karen's eyes flickered with doubt. She had always thrived on fear, on control, but she had never encountered someone who could neutralize her intimidation in an instant. Her mind raced. She could retreat, but pride and malice anchored her in place. She wasn't used to losing. The girl, still clinging to her wheelchair, watched in awe. Hope, tiny and fragile, began to grow inside her. She realized that this stranger, this veteran with his loyal dog, wasn't just a protector, he was a lifeline. And yet, the danger wasn't over. Karen, desperate and unpredictable, had another plan. She suddenly charged, aiming to strike the girl directly. But the veteran reacted with precision, intercepting her movement and deflecting her arms safely to the side. The dog lunged forward, not to attack, but to place a protective barrier, barking with terrifying intensity. Karen stumbled backward, startled by the coordinated defense. Her face twisted in rage and disbelief. This wasn't going as she had expected. Control was slipping through her fingers like water. The tension escalated further when Karen, in a last-ditch effort, attempted to grab a nearby garden tool, a metal rake, and swing it toward the girl. The veteran's instincts kicked in. He moved with lightning speed, intercepting the tool and holding it securely. "Enough," he commanded, his voice booming across the street. Karen froze, her energy spent, her hands shaking. Neighbors, previously silent witnesses, were now fully aware of the danger that had been unfolding all along. Some dialed 911, their hands trembling, reporting an active threat. Others whispered prayers, hoping the girl would make it through unharmed. The atmosphere on the street was tense, electric, filled with fear, suspense, and the fragile hope that justice, or at least protection, would prevail. Karen's final act of desperation came when she lunged forward one last time, but this time, the veteran and his dog were fully in sync. With a swift movement, he positioned his body to shield the girl while the dog stepped between Karen and the wheelchair, growling and baring its teeth. Karen tripped over the edge of her lawn, stumbling to the ground in defeat. The object she had held clattered uselessly beside her. For the first time that day, silence fell over the street. Karen lay on the ground, seething with anger and disbelief. The little girl's tears had slowed, replaced by shaky breaths and a sense of relief she had never thought possible. The veteran gently approached, kneeling beside her wheelchair. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, reassuring, protective. The dog's growl softened, but it stayed close, a silent guardian. Neighbors slowly emerged from their hiding spots, witnessing what had just transpired. Murmurs filled the air, astonishment evident on every face. The little girl, finally able to speak, whispered, "Thank you. I thought she would never stop." The veteran gave her a small, comforting nod, acknowledging her bravery as much as his own intervention. In that moment, the street felt different, forever changed. Karen, defeated and powerless, had learned something she would never forget. Cruelty has limits, and courage can appear when least expected. But this was only the beginning. The aftermath, the investigation, and the consequences that Karen would face were yet to unfold. And for the little girl, life would never be quite the same. The street had quieted, but the tension lingered like a storm cloud, refusing to dissipate. Karen lay on the ground, her pride shattered, her anger simmering beneath the surface. She had never been bested, never found herself powerless in the presence of someone she considered ordinary. But the veteran, calm and unyielding, had dismantled her authority in seconds. The little girl, still trembling, clung to the side of her wheelchair, her eyes wide with both awe and fear. She didn't understand the intricacies of authority or power, but she understood protection. And right now, she was protected. The veteran's gaze softened as he looked at her. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe now." His voice carried reassurance, the kind that immediately sinks deep into a frightened child's mind. The girl's shoulders relaxed slightly, though the lingering fear made her hands shake. She had been trapped in Karen's cruelty for what felt like hours, and now, for the first time that day, she could breathe. Karen, however, wasn't done, not in the slightest. As she slowly got to her feet, her mind raced. She couldn't allow this defeat to stand unchallenged. If she retreated now, her control would be lost, and in her world, control was everything. She scanned the street, her eyes landing on a cell phone lying on the lawn. An idea sparked in her mind, a dangerous, desperate idea. She would call the police, but not to report the veteran. No, she would twist the story, paint herself as the victim, and claim the veteran and his dog were a threat to her safety. Before she could dial, the veteran noticed the movement. He stepped closer, his presence once again commanding, his dog moving in sync. "Stay where you are," he warned, his tone firm, leaving no room for argument. Karen froze, her fingers hovering over the phone. She realized she was outmatched in every way, physically, mentally, and morally. But stubbornness and ego are dangerous companions. She pressed the phone to her ear anyway, calling the local police, her voice trembling with fake fear. The veteran, anticipating this, pulled out his phone almost simultaneously. "I've got the 911 call already in progress," he said calmly. "If you try to misrepresent this situation, the truth will be obvious." Karen's face twisted in anger. How had this man anticipated her every move? She had underestimated him, and now the trap had closed around her. Meanwhile, the little girl watched the interaction with growing curiosity. She had been terrified moments ago, but now she saw courage in action, decisiveness that no child could enact alone. She began to realize that sometimes protection doesn't come from friends, neighbors, or even adults, It comes from unexpected sources, people willing to step into danger without hesitation. Karen's tone on the phone grew louder, more frantic, as she tried to manipulate the dispatcher. "There's a man here. He's threatening me. He has a large dog," she cried, but the veteran stayed calm. His phone was recording the interaction discreetly. Every word, every threat, every attempt to twist reality was being documented. He knew the truth would be on his side, and justice, real justice, was about to unfold. As the minutes ticked by, Karen's temper flared. She looked around, realizing some neighbors were now recording the scene on their phones, capturing her erratic behavior for posterity. Her power was crumbling, her carefully curated image of dominance being stripped away piece by piece. Her face contorted with rage, and she finally did something so shocking that even the little girl gasped. She lunged at the veteran, aiming to shove him away, desperate to reclaim control. But the veteran's reflexes were impeccable. He blocked her, maneuvering her aside without harm, using a non-lethal hold trained to subdue without injury. The dog, sensing her aggression, stood alert, growling with a controlled ferocity that made Karen hesitate. For the first time, fear replaced anger in her eyes. She realized she was not just confronting a stranger, she was confronting someone capable of neutralizing her in every possible way. Finally, the dispatcher's voice came through on the line. "Units are on the way. Please remain calm and stay where you are." Karen's face drained of color. She had hoped to manipulate the narrative, but the truth was out there now, amplified by witnesses' recordings and the veteran's meticulous documentation. Every neighbor who had been too fearful to act now had the evidence they needed to understand what had truly occurred. The little girl, sensing the resolution, began to smile faintly. Relief washed over her, a sensation she had not felt in months. Her trust, so carefully broken by Karen's repeated abuse, began to rebuild in the presence of someone who had no reason to intervene, yet had done so out of sheer humanity. The bond she felt with the veteran and his dog was immediate, instinctive, unspoken. They were her protectors, her guardians, her heroes. But Karen wasn't finished, not entirely. Pride and vindictiveness still burned in her chest. She muttered under her breath, plotting her next move, a quiet but ominous whisper that carried through the tension-filled air. This wasn't over. Not yet. She would look for revenge, opportunities to undermine the girl, to discredit the veteran, to twist the story. But for now, the immediate threat had passed, and the girl's safety was secured. The veteran knelt beside her wheelchair, gently checking for any minor injuries, though thankfully the girl had escaped physical harm. "You're safe," he repeated, this time with a firmer, more reassuring tone. "No one is going to hurt you anymore." His dog nudged the girl's lap, offering comfort and a sense of security, its calm demeanor a stark contrast to the earlier chaos. Neighbors slowly began to emerge from their homes, their faces a mixture of relief, awe, and lingering shock. They had all witnessed what courage and swift action looked like in real time. Whispers of admiration for the veteran spread down the street, some even approaching to thank him for his intervention. The little girl's mother, who had been watching from the front yard, ran forward, tears streaming down her face. She hugged her daughter tightly, gratitude and emotion overwhelming her. Karen, meanwhile, retreated to the inside of her house, her expression dark and brooding. She knew that the veteran's evidence, combined with neighbor testimonies and her own erratic behavior, would leave her exposed. But she was calculating, patient. She would not give up entirely. For someone like her, defeat was temporary, vengeance was only postponed. As the veteran and the girl's mother exchanged words, the little girl finally spoke. "Thank you for not letting her hurt me," she whispered, her voice small but filled with sincerity. The veteran smiled faintly, ruffling her hair gently. "You don't have to thank me. You were brave, too. That's why we could stop her." The girl nodded, a new sense of confidence and trust beginning to take root within her. The dog, sensing the tension had subsided, finally relaxed, sitting by the veteran's side but remaining alert. It had been a crucial part of the intervention, its presence instrumental in protecting the girl and deterring Karen's aggression. Together, the veteran and his dog represented a force that Karen could not overpower, a combination of training, instinct, and unwavering moral courage. By the time the police arrived, Karen was sitting silently in her house, fuming but powerless. The scene outside told the story more clearly than words ever could. A little girl had been saved, a bully's control dismantled, and a community reminded that courage can emerge from the most unexpected sources. The little girl's eyes followed the veteran and his dog as they prepared to leave, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had learned a lesson that day, a lesson about courage, hope, and the extraordinary lengths some people will go to protect the innocent. And while Karen would plot her next move, she now knew she could face the world with the knowledge that protectors exist even in moments of unimaginable fear. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the suburban rooftops, casting long shadows across the street, yet the atmosphere remained tense. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but Karen's fury was far from spent. Behind the closed blinds of her house, she seethed, replaying every moment of the confrontation in her mind. The humiliation she had suffered was not something she could accept quietly. She was determined to reclaim control, to rewrite the story in her favor. Her fingers tapped anxiously on her phone as she began to plot her next move. Meanwhile, the little girl sat in her wheelchair, still clutching her mother's hand, eyes wide with lingering fear. Though she was safe physically, the emotional scars were harder to mend. Every shadow, every creak of the house reminded her of Karen's relentless cruelty. The veteran had left moments earlier, his presence gone, but the impact of his actions firmly imprinted on her memory. His dog had returned to its handler, but the sense of security it provided lingered in her heart. The neighborhood, which had initially been a silent witness, was now buzzing with whispers and speculation. Some residents praised the veteran's intervention, others wondered about Karen's next step, and a few feared the situation was far from over. In every conversation, the air was thick with tension. No one wanted to be the next target of Karen's wrath. Yet curiosity and concern kept them on the street, watching and waiting. Karen's plan was subtle but dangerous. She knew she could not confront the veteran directly again without legal repercussions. Instead, she began gathering evidence, meticulously taking photos of the street, the girl's wheelchair, and even the veteran's home from a distance. She intended to create a narrative that painted herself as a victim, a narrative she would craft to manipulate authorities and neighbors alike. Her mind raced with devious possibilities, each more calculated than the last. The little girl, sensing something was off, became restless. She had learned that fear often hides in plain sight, in quiet whispers and sudden movements. That evening, she noticed Karen peering through her blinds, her eyes sharp and calculating. Though the veteran had gone, the girl realized danger could return at any moment. She clutched her mother's hand tighter, her small body trembling as shadows danced across the living room wall. Later that night, Karen made her first move. She sent anonymous messages to neighbors alleging harassment and claiming that the veteran and his dog had threatened her safety. The community, still processing the events of earlier that day, was caught off guard. Some hesitated to believe her, but others, influenced by fear and uncertainty, began to question what they had witnessed firsthand. Karen's manipulations began to sow doubt and confusion, a psychological game designed to destabilize everyone involved. The girl's mother, aware of Karen's tendencies, took precautions. She double-checked locks, ensured the girl's room was secure, and maintained close contact with neighbors she trusted. Yet, despite these measures, a gnawing anxiety lingered. Karen's unpredictability made it impossible to relax fully. The mother knew that while physical harm had been averted, the psychological battle had only just begun. The veteran, informed of Karen's ongoing schemes, remained vigilant. He communicated with local authorities, ensuring that any attempts by Karen to distort the truth would be documented and countered. He also spent time with the girl, teaching her ways to stay calm, recognize threats, and trust in her own ability to signal for help. The dog, always present during these visits, provided comfort and a tangible sense of protection that words alone could not convey. As days passed, Karen's frustration grew. Her plans to manipulate the narrative met resistance at every turn. Neighbors who had witnessed her behavior firsthand supported the girl and her family. The veteran's careful documentation, combined with multiple witness accounts, made it nearly impossible for Karen to cast herself as the victim. Yet, she refused to surrender. Her obsession with control had transformed into a relentless drive to regain dominance, even if it meant escalating the conflict further. Then came the shocking twist. Karen attempted a direct confrontation at night, hoping the cover of darkness would give her an advantage. She approached the girl's home silently, unaware that the veteran had anticipated her move. Motion sensors, lights, and surveillance cameras had been set up, capturing every step she took. As she reached for the front door, an automated light flooded the area, startling her and exposing her presence. The dog, trained to respond immediately, barked and advanced, forcing Karen to retreat hastily. This incident left the neighborhood shaken. The message was clear. Karen was not finished, and the threat she posed extended beyond daylight hours. The little girl, though reassured by the veteran's intervention, experienced renewed fear. Sleep was difficult, and shadows in her room seemed larger and more menacing. Her mother, determined to protect her, stayed close, comforting her child while maintaining vigilance. Authorities, now fully aware of Karen's behavior, began formal investigations. Her previous reputation as a strict, by-the-book HOA member worked against her as evidence of harassment and intimidation surfaced. Complaints, witness statements, and video recordings painted a detailed picture of her cruelty, making it increasingly difficult for her to deny her actions. Yet, her manipulative nature ensured that the situation remained tense, as she continued to attempt to sway opinions through subtle intimidation and deceit. Through it all, the veteran remained a steadfast presence. His training and experience allowed him to anticipate Karen's tactics and protect the girl and her family effectively. He coached neighbors on safety protocols, helping the community create a network of vigilance. His dog, always at the ready, became a symbol of protection and loyalty, a reminder that courage, even in the face of relentless cruelty, could prevail. By the end of the week, Karen's desperation became palpable. Her carefully constructed plans were unraveling, and her influence over the neighborhood had diminished significantly. She had underestimated the resilience of the girl, the determination of her mother, and the strategic foresight of the veteran. Yet, Karen's mind was still plotting, still calculating, and the tension remained high. No one knew exactly what she might attempt next. For the little girl, each day was a mixture of fear and reassurance. The bond she had formed with the veteran and his dog grew stronger, providing her with confidence and a sense of safety. She began to understand that courage could be contagious and that even in the darkest moments, allies could appear when least expected. The lessons learned during this ordeal would remain with her forever. Trust, vigilance, and the knowledge that standing up for oneself sometimes requires support from unexpected heroes. As night fell once more, the neighborhood remained on edge. Karen's presence lingered like a shadow, her intentions unknown, but her threat undeniable. The veteran, aware of the delicate balance between caution and overconfidence, continued to monitor the situation closely. The dog stayed close to the girl during every visit, a living symbol of protection and loyalty, a deterrent against further aggression. And then, just as everyone began to believe that the immediate danger had subsided, Karen made her boldest move yet, one that would shock the community, challenge the veteran's skills, and push the girl's courage to its limits. The tension, suspense, and unpredictability of the situation were far from over. The tension in the neighborhood had reached a breaking point. Karen's subtle attempts at manipulation and harassment had escalated into outright aggression, leaving the community on edge. The little girl's family, though bolstered by the veteran's presence, knew that the danger was far from over. Every creak of a door, every shadow cast by the streetlights made the girl flinch. Her world, once simple and secure, had become a minefield of fear and anticipation. Late one evening, just as the sky darkened to a deep, threatening indigo, Karen put her most audacious plan into motion. She had spent days preparing, meticulously studying the family's routines, noting every security flaw she could exploit. Her obsession with regaining control had transformed into a dangerous determination. This wasn't just about intimidation anymore. It was about seizing power, about proving that she could dominate even the most formidable opposition. Karen waited until the streets were quiet, the perfect cover for her attack. She approached the house, masked and deliberate, her movements calculated. But what she didn't know was that the veteran had anticipated this. Surveillance cameras had been installed discreetly around the property, motion sensors activated, and the dog trained to respond immediately to any intruder. Karen's plan, daring though it was, had been expected. The veteran, alerted by the motion sensors, moved swiftly into position. He had positioned himself strategically between the front entrance and the girls' room. The dog, sensing the threat, let out a low, warning growl. Karen hesitated for just a second, the growl piercing the night like a blade. In that moment, she realized she had underestimated the veteran's foresight and the dog's instinctive vigilance. Undeterred, Karen forced herself forward, trying to ignore the signs. She reached for the front door, but the lights flooded the entrance, triggered by the sensors. Shadows stretched and twisted across the walls, exposing her movements. The dog barked sharply, bounding toward her with controlled aggression. Karen froze, realizing that any sudden action could lead to immediate capture or exposure. The veteran stepped into the doorway, calm but commanding. "Step away," he said firmly, his voice carrying across the silent street. "This ends now." Karen's hands trembled as she gripped the doorknob, her face a mixture of fury, desperation, and disbelief. She had never encountered resistance like this before, calculated, unwavering, and unafraid. Suddenly, Karen lunged, attempting to force her way inside. The veteran reacted instinctively, using his body to block her path, while the dog positioned itself protectively between Karen and the girls' room. The struggle was tense, a high-stakes game of balance, strength, and strategy. Karen's movements were frantic, unpredictable, yet precise enough to make every second critical. Neighbors, though watching from behind curtains, could hear the commotion, the scuffle, the shouts, the dog's growls echoing into the night. Fear and anticipation gripped the onlookers. They knew the stakes were higher than ever. A single mistake could have dire consequences. The little girl, hearing the chaos, held tightly to her mother, her pulse racing, knowing that danger was at the threshold of her home. Karen, realizing brute force wouldn't succeed, switched tactics. She tried to distract the veteran, throwing herself to the side and attempting to grab a nearby object, a metal lamp from the porch, to use as a weapon. But the veteran anticipated the move, stepping swiftly to intercept her, redirecting the object safely to the ground. The dog barked, moving in a protective arc around the girls' room. Karen's plans, meticulous and bold, were unraveling with every calculated step the veteran took. In a desperate act, Karen made her boldest, most shocking move yet. She lunged toward the girl's wheelchair, intending to damage it, to harm the child emotionally if not physically. The little girl's scream cut through the night, a raw, piercing sound that seemed to freeze the world in place. But the veteran was ready. With precise timing, he intercepted Karen, redirecting her momentum safely while keeping her from causing any harm. For a tense moment, everything seemed suspended. Karen, on the ground, breathing heavily, realized that she had lost. The veteran's calm authority, combined with his dog's protective presence, had neutralized her aggression at every turn. Yet, despite this defeat, Karen's eyes burned with a dangerous mix of rage and obsession. She would not yield easily. Her mind raced with plans for future retaliation, plotting subtle ways to regain influence, to challenge the girl and her family psychologically, even if physical confrontation was no longer an option. The little girl, trembling but unharmed, looked up at the veteran. Relief washed over her in waves, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. You saved me," she whispered, her voice fragile but full of gratitude. The veteran nodded, giving her a reassuring smile. "You were brave," he said gently, "and bravery makes a difference." The dog nudged the girl's lap, a quiet reminder that she was no longer alone, no longer defenseless. Karen, realizing that further aggression would result in legal consequences, finally retreated. She returned to her home, slamming the door behind her. But the battle had left its mark. The neighbors, who had witnessed the confrontation, were in awe of the veteran's courage and composure. Stories of the night's events would circulate throughout the community, a clear testament to how preparation, courage, and loyalty could triumph over malice and cruelty. In the aftermath, authorities arrived, alerted by both neighbors and the veteran's prior communications. Karen's repeated acts of intimidation, harassment, and attempted aggression were thoroughly documented. Evidence from cameras, witness statements, and the veteran's meticulous records painted a clear picture of her behavior. Legal action was imminent, and for the first time, Karen realized that her power in the neighborhood was slipping irreversibly. The little girl, now safe and secure in her home, began to understand the true nature of courage. Protection, vigilance, and preparedness had saved her life. The bond she formed with the veteran and his dog went beyond gratitude. It was an unspoken trust, a recognition that true heroes appear when least expected. Each day that followed, the girl's confidence grew, though the memory of Karen's cruelty remained a sobering reminder of the fragility of safety. Meanwhile, Karen's obsession persisted, but she was contained. Her threats were mitigated by authorities and vigilant neighbors. Every attempt to regain control was anticipated and neutralized, leaving her frustrated, angry, and powerless. The veteran, however, remained a constant presence, a stabilizing force ensuring that the girl and her family remained safe. His dog continued to provide both protection and comfort, its presence a living testament to loyalty and courage. By the end of this harrowing night, it was clear to everyone involved that evil can lurk behind the most ordinary facades, but courage, preparation, and the willingness to act decisively can stop it. Karen had been defeated, her attempts at dominance thwarted, and her malicious plans dismantled. Yet the psychological scars left by the ordeal would require time and care to heal, particularly for the little girl who had faced terror far beyond her years. The sun rose slowly over the quiet suburban street the morning after Karen's most aggressive attempt. The events of the previous night had left a lingering tension in the air, but a sense of relief began to settle among the neighbors. Karen's threats had been neutralized, the little girl was safe, and the veteran, along with his loyal dog, had ensured that no immediate danger remained. Yet beneath the calm exterior of the neighborhood, a quiet reckoning was taking place. Inside her home, Karen seethed, pacing back and forth. She had failed, her meticulously crafted plans shattered by someone she had underestimated. Her reputation as a controlling, untouchable HOA member had been publicly dismantled. Witnesses had come forward, surveillance footage confirmed her aggressive actions, and the veteran's intervention had left no room for denial. For the first time in her life, Karen experienced the suffocating sting of complete powerlessness. Outside, the little girl sat on her porch, her wheelchair positioned to catch the warm morning light. She was tired, her small body still trembling from the adrenaline of the previous night, but a deep sense of safety surrounded her. The veteran knelt beside her, offering gentle words and guidance. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. "And remember, courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about standing up even when you are." The girl's mother hugged her tightly, relief flooding her features. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "You're safe now. No one will ever hurt you again." She glanced toward the veteran, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. The man simply nodded, his dog sitting calmly at his side, ears alert but relaxed. Together, they had ensured not just the girl's safety, but a renewed sense of hope and security for her entire family. News of Karen's behavior began to spread throughout the neighborhood. Neighbors who had once been fearful to confront her now shared their experiences, revealing a pattern of cruelty and intimidation that extended far beyond the little girl. Karen's authority as an HOA member crumbled under the weight of truth. The board held an emergency meeting to address her repeated harassment, ultimately deciding to remove her from her position. Legal action loomed as multiple families considered pressing charges. Karen, once feared and respected, was now isolated, her influence eradicated by her own actions. But even with Karen's defeat, the emotional impact on the little girl lingered. She had faced fear unlike any she had known before, and while the veteran's intervention had saved her, she still carried the memories of Karen's cruelty. Over the following weeks, the veteran worked closely with her, teaching her strategies for confidence, awareness, and resilience. The dog remained a constant companion, offering comfort and a tangible sense of security. Slowly, the girl began to regain a sense of normalcy, her laughter returning in small, cautious bursts. In an unexpected turn, the community came together in support of the girl and her family. Neighbors offered assistance, checking in daily, and ensuring that the home environment was safe and welcoming. The traumatic events that had once isolated the family now forged a network of protection, connection, and solidarity. The veteran's presence, though no longer required on a daily basis, remained a symbol of courage and the power of standing up for what is right. And then came the final shocking twist. One evening, weeks after Karen's defeat, the little girl noticed something unusual in her backyard. A small, crumpled envelope had been left near the garden, no footprints nearby. With trembling hands, she opened it to find a note in Karen's unmistakable handwriting. "You may have won this battle, but I am not done. Watch carefully. You can't hide forever." Fear surged again, a cold reminder that Karen's obsession was not extinguished. But this time, the girl was different. She had courage, allies, and strategies she had learned from the veteran. She ran inside to tell her mother, who immediately contacted the authorities. The veteran returned, alerted by the situation, and together they reviewed the note, the surroundings, and any potential risks. The dog, sensing tension, remained vigilant, its protective instincts heightened. This moment became a pivotal lesson for the little girl. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act decisively despite it. Karen's threats, while unsettling, no longer held the paralyzing power they once did. The neighborhood had shifted, no longer a place where fear could thrive unchecked. Instead, it became a community bound by vigilance, care, and courage. In the following weeks, authorities monitored Karen closely. Her attempts to intimidate or harass were met with immediate legal consequences. She was required to attend court hearings and faced restrictions that prevented her from contacting the girl or her family. Slowly, the threat she posed became manageable, though the memory of her cruelty lingered as a cautionary tale for the community. Meanwhile, the girl flourished. With her mother's love, the veteran's guidance, and the loyal companionship of the dog, she learned to navigate her world with confidence. She began attending school again, participating in activities she had once feared, and forming friendships with children who had once been distant. The trauma of Karen's abuse remained, but it became a source of strength, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, courage and compassion can prevail. The veteran, quietly respected and admired, continued to visit, not as a protector, but as a mentor and friend, teaching lessons that extended beyond physical safety. The dog, ever watchful, remained a symbol of loyalty, courage, and unwavering guardianship. Together, they had not only saved a life, but had transformed a community, showing that vigilance, preparation, and moral courage could overcome even the most relentless cruelty. As the story drew to a close, the neighborhood settled into a newfound sense of peace. Karen, though still obsessed, could no longer exert power over the people around her. The little girl had reclaimed her sense of safety and joy, her resilience a testament to the power of support and courage. And the veteran and his dog, heroes without expectation of recognition, stood as living proof that one act of bravery can change countless lives. The final scene, quiet yet powerful, leaves a lasting impression. The little girl, sitting in her wheelchair on the porch, looks out over the neighborhood. The sun is setting, casting golden light across the street. She smiles faintly, feeling the presence of those who have protected her. She knows the world can be cruel, but she also knows that courage, loyalty, and compassion will always stand against darkness. And in that moment, the story is not just about fear or cruelty, it's about resilience, hope, and the extraordinary lengths people will go to protect the innocent. If this story moved you, left you on the edge of your seat, or reminded you how courage and loyalty can change lives, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more shocking, real-life stories that you won't find anywhere else. I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me what city you're watching from, and let me know if you've ever witnessed someone standing up against cruelty like this. Your voice matters, and your story could inspire someone else to act with courage too. And remember, real heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they show up in the most unexpected ways, just when hope seems lost. So share this video with friends and family, because everyone deserves to know that bravery, compassion, and loyalty can truly make a difference. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will shock you, touch your heart, and keep you guessing until the very end.